Morning, citizens. You join me in a beautiful place on a beautiful Easter Monday morning. This place is just heaven, you know. And you know, we're well into, well, we're only just into spring, and all the rapeseeds starting to come now. I've got this lovely copse of trees here as well. So, as usual, I haven't posted for a while, so I thought I'd do something, and I was getting a bit stir crazy, and as it was such a beautiful morning, I thought I'd come out here. And I'm glad I did. So I was thinking that we needed a bit of encouragement as well, and springtime is a good time for that. You know, there's always some horrible thing happening somewhere in the world, and somewhere, yeah, quite a lot of horrible things are happening here, you know, in England, although probably not right here. But I did a talk with my friend Momus Najmi. There's a kind of return fixture after I interviewed him for my channel, and I've been watching his stuff. Oh, look at this lovely house here. Look, I don't want to be too invasive, but and I think he makes a good point here. You know, we all know that we're not going to vote our way out of this, and I think also we're not going to legislate our way out of this. Politics is captured. The judiciary is captured. We now have the spectre of activist judges, as in the case of Sam Millier. And these are the midwits that have fucked everything up. You know, they may be supposedly highly qualified and have reached high positions, but that doesn't mean a great deal. We can see the corruption. It's in our faces. But Momus was, you know, he was invited to speak at the Turning Point thing that was in Whitehall. You know, I don't think it was a very big affair. Most of these things aren't, because most people have no idea what's going on, as we all know. But you know, he's been saying that we need a sort of cultural rejuvenation, and as a Kuwaiti-born Pakistani immigrant, he seems to understand this more than most British people. You know, he came here because he wanted to come, because he seemed to love England. And he seemed to love England without actually experiencing any of this, which is quite something. And I think he's got a point here. I think he's got a point. They say politics is downstream from culture. I think that's probably right. I think that probably is right. So like most of these things, they start small, and you know, you have to weather the humiliation of being a lone voice, being the conspiracy theorist, while the rest of society goes along ignoring you. But we do have to do something, you know, we have to act. We have to act, and we have to act and not just talk. And I say that as somebody who's talked and talked and talked and talked and talked about this stuff. But with all the nastiness that's going on everywhere, you know, there are some things that are happening that only the most foresighted people could have seen. Like you've got the spectre in, I mean, this is America, but nevertheless it's part of the same thing. They're putting metal detectors that everybody has to walk through on the New York subway. And you know, if you don't want to walk through them, you end up getting searched. Now, you know, that's America. You know, you have to subject yourself to the searches of the state. I mean, how is that any different to show us your papers? What happened in the communist era and in when the Nazis were in power in Germany. You know, some busybody policeman comes up and decides that he has the right to search you. Now, as usual, these things are in response to, you know, violent things happening. But the violent things have been promoted and they've been allowed to get out of control. And my feeling is they've been allowed to get out of control for the express purposes of bringing in, instead of controlling violent criminals, they now control everybody. That's the plan, it seems to me. It can't be an accident. And so you've got that going on in America, and at the same time, you know, you get a guy who stabbed somebody in broad daylight on a train in Beckenham. And it's filmed. And he doesn't care. And so the idea of the metal detectors, and of course we're a lot further down this road than the Americans, is to prevent anybody from having a weapon travelling on public transport. And at the same time, nobody is there to protect us if somebody comes at us with a knife. You know, you can't carry your own knife, you know, and I'm not even suggesting that that is a solution. What with all the young men being stabbed to death in London, I'm not even suggesting that's a solution, but they're not stopping the young men carrying knives, but they are stopping people from protecting themselves from young men carrying knives. You know, Solzhenitsyn talked about this. He said something to the effect of, you know, if you're just a criminal, you know, a sleazy scumbag thieving criminal, and you get caught with a knife, that's just par for the course. That's what they expect. You know, they expect you to have a knife, so, you know, you get a slap on the wrist. You know, back in those days, you probably got to get a bit of a kicking, and then that was it. But if you're an ordinary member of the public who's not a criminal, and you're caught with a knife, that's terrorism, according to them. So we've got this situation where all the doors are being closed to us. We're being menaced by Somali machete gangs. And the first time that anybody stands up to them and fights back with lethal force, they'll be going to jail for 15, 20 years. The message is, it's a dangerous world out there, but don't you dare try and fight back, because we'll throw the book at you. So as I've said many times before, that the rule of law is dead here. It doesn't exist. I was talking to my lawyer friend the other day, the one with Trump derangement syndrome, and you know, I tried to avoid the subject of Trump, you know, but you know, after we'd unavoidably got onto the subject, I didn't bring it up, he did, but you know, I tried to say relatively neutral things like, you know, I don't think it matters who's in the White House or some such, and he was saying that, you know, and I said that I don't think there are any democracies anymore. I don't think anybody lives in a democracy. And he said, well, you know, just somewhere where we have the rule of law. And of course he's a lawyer. You know, he believes we have the rule of law. And I guess he has to believe that in order to carry on doing his job, but you know, I always just said, well, what about this case of Sam Mellier then? And, you know, I said to him, we got 2 years for putting up stickers that say it's okay to be white. And he said, no, he wouldn't have been put in jail for that. It wouldn't have got 2 years for that, you know. And I said, well, maybe there's something I'm missing. You know, maybe there is something about the case I'm missing. Maybe he was putting up stickers saying it's okay to be white whilst building a bomb in his basement, you know. I mean, I certainly haven't heard any of that, and if that had been the case, you'd think it would be broadcast, wouldn't you? But anyway, so I said, well, I don't know, you know, maybe you're right, you know, let's have a, you know, why don't you look him up? And of course he looked him up, and of course the first website he goes to is the BBC. So you know, and you know, the BBC put a more negative gloss on his character than has been the case with people on our side of the fence, which is only to be expected. But he couldn't refute it, you know. I mean, there wasn't anything more serious than what I'd already read, you know. And so he clings to this idea of the rule of law as if we still have it. And it seems to be that in the cases that he hears about, the law is applied. So he believes that we have the rule of law. So but if the law is applied sometimes and not other times, it's not law, is it? You know, it's arbitrary. It's something else. But I suppose most people do think that we have the rule of law. And they still cling to it. But like I say, there's no voting our way out of this. There's no legislating our way out of this, and there's no there's no legal way out of this. They've got everything sewn up. They've closed all the doors. You can't get any satisfaction from politics. You can't get any satisfaction from the law. All the other institutions are against us. The only thing we have is numbers. And we do have to talk to other people, and we have to be a bit bolder about seeming as if you're that nutcase. You know, I don't do it enough. I'm sure most of you don't. All it needs is for enough people to realise what's going on. Yeah, it doesn't need anything else. Because if enough people refuse to go along with it, it doesn't matter what the law says. It doesn't matter what politics says. It doesn't matter what's made legal or made illegal. If people don't don't obey it, it has no force at all. So and we've heard a lot about, over the past 3 or 4 years, we've heard a lot about non-compliance being the only way. And you know, when it came to COVID, it was quite obvious what that meant. It meant not taking the jab, not wearing a mask, not complying with the lockdown. But the reason that all of these restrictions have ended now is basically because people stopped complying with them. I mean, they'll say that that there's no longer a mask mandate, or you know, you don't have to take the jab. And we never actually had to take the jab in the UK, but many people around the world were, you know, more or less forced to take it. And they'll say it's because, you know, we've changed the rules now, but that isn't really what's happened. What's really happened is that people have just thought, well, I can't be asked with complying with all this shit, you know, and I don't want to, and I'm not going to do it. And so they then, when the writing is on the wall, when it's obvious that people aren't complying, to save themselves a bit of face, what they do is they then say, oh, well, we've relaxed the mask mandate, you know, as if what they say is the thing that makes the difference. And this is a fantasy they have. You know, it's a fantasy that has some grounding, because in a generally law-abiding society such as we have, this is what people do. You know, they look at the law and say, well, that's illegal. We shouldn't do that, and we understand the reasons why it's legal. So we'll comply and we won't do it, as you know, as part of our social duty to do that. And they thought that would go on forever. And they pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed, and with ever more ridiculous rules. And people just got
utterly fed up with it. And that's why there aren't any mask mandates now. There are also, it's also because of, it's partly to do with the people like us who actually refused. But it is also equally because of people who've just sort of, they've just sort of given up with complying, you know. And one of the reasons they've given up with complying is because they know there's no sanction. And we should use this as an inspiration. You know, I think I worked out the other day, well, some time ago, I worked out that there was one policeman or police officer, I suppose we should say these days, for every 532 people. Now, if one person breaks the law out of those 532 people, then they can enforce the law and they can enforce it easily. But if 5 people don't, or 10 people don't, or 50 don't, they're in trouble and they can't enforce it. So we have to sort of, what would you say? We have to make non-compliance not just a phrase, you know, a slogan. We have to make it central to how we behave in the world going forward. The law should be ignored. The law is an ass, and it should be ignored. We know that the law isn't applied fairly, and we certainly know that it isn't applied for our benefit. So at the very least, we should withdraw our permission. Our permission that they should be able to enforce the law. You know, we know because of the, you know, of all the Jew-hating Islamist mobs in London, we know that there's too many of them, and that's why they don't enforce the law. You know, recently there was somebody was waving swastikas around, and the pathetic copper started mewing about context, as if waving swastikas around with regards to Jews has to have some context. You know, the law is dead. You know, we need to make it reveal itself, as we are doing with every day, revealing itself to just be, it's not law, it's just power. It's just power. And they seem to believe that they can just ramp that up and we'll all just fall into line. It's hard to know whether or not they expected as much resistance as they got, or whether they expected more. But whatever it is, it now needs to come to an end. Society and all the laws on which it is based don't apply like they used to. The social contract has been broken. And we are under no moral obligation to abide by it any longer. So there's no moral justification for that. But perhaps even more importantly, we should have no fear of enforcement. You know, this is going to be the Wild West, and we should embrace it. Anyway, people, I hope you all had a good Easter. I know it's another incoherent rant, but I hope you enjoyed the images, and I hope you all had a good Easter. So stay free.